vlog, I'll continue my series. This will be part 3 of my life as a railway carman. Basically just my railroad journal. I begin the vlog today with an excerpt taken from a more lengthy story which I told here on YouTube. I'll put a link down at the bottom. You might want to go back and read the whole story. It was called How I Got a Railroad Job. And this is just an excerpt from it, and I'll continue on with my journal. A few days after I got to my parents' mountain home in Morganton, Georgia, my father returned home from a trip to Florida. We were sitting and watching TV that evening after eating a big supper, when my father asked what I was going to do about getting a job. I told him I had been a long time since I had any kind of a vacation, and that I planned to just sit around and visit with them for a week or two, and then I would go out and get a job. I just need a little vacation for a while, I told him. Besides, I have a few bucks saved, and it seemed like a reasonable thing for me to ask. It was just good for me to be home for a change instead of gallivanting all over the world as I had done when I was in the Navy. If you have ever been away from your family for 4 years, you might understand the need just to be around family for a while. For the first time in weeks, I had made it through a whole 2 days without being worried about my future for a change, but he had just spoiled all that for me. The next morning I awoke to the smell of bacon frying, coffee brewing, and biscuits in the oven. I hit the deck and got dressed. After shaving and getting cleaned up, I walked into the kitchen. I said, "It sure smells good in here." My father was sitting at the dining room table, had a newspaper open and was reading it. If I had looked a little closer, I would have noticed he was thumbing through the want ads. I sat down as the food was being placed on the table. We had a nice breakfast, and it was nice to eat some eggs without occasionally biting down on some eggshells or some ship's cook had left in the food, and drink some coffee that didn't taste like it was made with water dipped from the ship's bilges. After we finished, I complimented my mother on making such a good breakfast. By the time I headed through the living room, my father was already out there and was sitting in a rocking chair with the Atlanta Constitution paper flipped open to the want ads. This time I got a drift of what was on his mind. Whether it was the fact that he was truly concerned about my future, or the fact he was afraid I was home to be a loafer for the rest of my life, I don't know. I was, however, feeling I had worn out my welcome. As I was passing through where he sat, when are you gonna go get a job, son? I kind of lost it briefly and said, "This sure was a short vacation," but it fell on deaf ears. "Here's a job," he was saying while looking at some menial job ad that was in the newspaper. I would never have even considered it. Looking over his shoulder at the want ads, I saw one large ad that covered at least a third of the page. I wasn't even close enough to see what the words were, but I reached over his shoulder and pointed my finger at the big ad and said, "Hell, I'll go to work for those people right there." "What?" he asked. He took another look at the paper, and for the first time he read that ad. He had overlooked it all morning. He began to read it aloud. It said something to the effect that Southern Railway now hiring and accepting applications for switchman, trainman, brakeman, rail car repairman. Note, a rail car repairman requires knowledge and experience in welding, blueprints, metal fabrication, requires a high mechanical aptitude. "I will apply for the rail car repair job," I interrupted him. At that point in this, he stopped and said, "You can't get a job with the railroad. It says welding and all these other requirements." I had already received a lot of information when I left the Navy about the possibility of working at a fire department, because in the last few years I had specialized in firefighting and had taken every test in school the Navy had to offer on the subject. And I had excelled in it and had quite a working knowledge of firefighting. Had achieved the rank of E5 doing it. I thought to myself, all that training, and in a fit of anger I'm picking the job by wildly pointing my finger at an ad in a newspaper. The ad did, however, have its appeal to me. Why can't I work for them, I said. What do you think I was learning when I took 3 years of machine shop in high school? If there's one thing Mr. Frank Lewis had ever taught me in those 3 years, he taught me welding, blueprints, and metal fabrication. I don't know how to get to Atlanta from here, I said. But if you point me in the right direction, I will find it, I said. I thought to myself, he's still manipulating me, and I just fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He just ended my vacation in 5 minutes and asked me off looking for a job, just like he wanted. Point you in the right direction, he said. Hell, I'll take you down there. The next morning around 9 a.m. we arrived at the Southern Railway office building at 125 Spring Street, and my father pulled up to the curb and parked right in front of the main doors. I looked at the large gray building and told him, the sign here says no parking. I doubt you'll be in there long, he said. I will wait for you right here. It was obvious to me that he had no confidence in my ability to get a job there. I thought, well, there's a positive attitude, if ever I heard one. I exited the car and entered the building and was directed by the nurse at the nurse's station to go down the hall to the last door on the left, which I promptly did. On entering the large room, I saw 20 or so men sitting there waiting at 2 long tables. There were signs on the table for trainmen, switchmen, brakemen, and the other table had a sign for rail car repairmen. I pulled up a chair and sat at the end of the appropriate table. Perhaps half of the men there to apply for jobs were sitting at my table. I thought, well, chances of getting a job now are much slimmer. I sure never expected to see this many folks looking for a job. There were 2 doors at the end of the room. There were 2 passageways from one side to the other, obviously leading to other offices. A man entered through one of the doors and said, "May I have your attention, please? Today we're only accepting applications for trainmen, brakemen, and switchmen." He then exited through the other door. He was barely out of the room before there was a scurry of chairs sliding back and men suddenly deciding they wanted to sit at the other table. I was now sitting alone at the end of a 10-foot-long table with lots of elbow room. There were perhaps 19 men trying to squeeze up to the other table, which was only suitable for about half that many people. I sniffed my armpit, wondering if I had a bad case of body odor or something, because they sure disappeared from my table quick. A short while later, 2 men entered the room from the same door the other men had. One was telling all the men at the other table to get up and follow him, and they all exited through his door. The other man approached me as I sat thinking, there goes the ones most likely to get a job. "What are you here for?" I held up the section of newspaper in my hand and said, "I'm here to apply for the rail car repairman job." He tried to tell me something about not hiring them now, but I interrupted him and telling him, "Your ad specifically states." He interrupted me and said, "Have you ever been arrested?" I started to say, shouldn't the proper term be, "Have I ever been convicted of a crime?" But he just replied, "Nope." He said, "Well, wait here," and he left the room. Sitting there alone in a huge room, I began to develop some kind of complex. Maybe I have got body odor. Sniff my armpit again. Surely I don't smell that bad, do I? In a few minutes, the man returned with a stack of papers. He set them in front of me, handed me a box of pencils, and said, "Fill out these papers regarding qualifications and job history, and then take this mechanical aptitude test," and quickly left the room. I debated with myself as to whether my armpit needed a re-sniff, because he sure left quick, but decided that it was just their short and to-the-point way of conducting interviews. Filling out the few pages regarding job history didn't take long, but the fairly thick mechanical aptitude test was a breeze, and I finished it in under an hour. In a little while, the man returned and collected my papers, casually thumbed through them. The purpose, I presumed, was to determine if the application went from this point to farther up the chain of command or to some wastebasket somewhere. "Follow me, Mr. Parks," he said. I recall thinking, these are sure some talkative folks around here, as I followed him down the hallway. Sat outside an office for a while in a wooden chair, waiting to see if someone around there carried on conversations that consisted of sentences more than 3 syllables, or if I was going to be shown the front door. In a short while, I was escorted into an office where I met a man with a white shirt and tie. Sitting there at a big desk, I shook his hand and sat in his interview chair. "I have your application here, the results of the test you took," he said, and I sat on the edge of my chair waiting. He paused a minute as if he was in deep thought and said, "You have great qualifications, and you're just what we're looking for. The last Carman school started over a week ago, but I think from looking at your results here that you're a very smart man, and you will have no trouble catching up. I'm going to push your application straight through, but you're going to have to get all the medical stuff done right away, so you're going to be busy the rest of the day attending to it all. Get it all done, and you will start school Monday morning. Welcome aboard," he said, shook my hand. "Take these papers down to the nurse's station, and you will be directed where to go from there." And I had crossed the room and had my hand on the doorknob when it registered in my brain like a bell going off. Ding, ding, money. We haven't talked money. I turned and faced him, saying, "Just one thing." "Yes, Mr. Parks," he said. "How much will I be making?" He glanced down at his papers as if he didn't already know and said, "The job pays $3.49 an hour." "Thanks," I replied. As I turned the doorknob to leave the room, my brain was going ding, ding, ding. The cash register was ringing up money. However, I managed to get out of the room without shouting, "Hot dang." I was thinking, wow, I'm going to be rolling in dough. Now that's considerably more than any fireman's job would pay me. A considerable load of worry had just gotten a lot lighter. A short trip to the nurse's station followed, where I filled out a ton of forms. I was directed from there to go to Dr. Rice's office on Peachtree Street, and that he would be waiting for me and give me a physical exam. I probably could end the story here, but no story about this subject would be complete without mention of a certain old grumpy company doctor. I can add a link here if you're interested to read that story, which is pretty long. About 2.5 hours after entering the Southern Railway building, I walked out the front doors. I looked for my father's car, knowing he had probably had to find some place to park. I walked down the street and finally found his car. He was sitting there circling ads in the newspaper. I got in the car and he was saying he had more places that I should consider putting in an application as well. I guess he assumed that I had just put in the application and didn't have an answer yet. You should go here and put in an application and then go here, he indicated from his paper. I said, nope, can't do that. What I gotta do is go to this office on Peachtree Street and see this doctor. What? He said. Yep, I start school Monday morning. What does it pay? When I answered him, his little built-in head machine started running. He was trying to think how much money that is. Well, I had told him $3.49. Well, that's a lot of money. I interrupted his brain strain and said, it's about $140 a week, and it's a whole lot more than I would have made in the Navy. A pretty good starting salary. Thanks for bringing me down here, I said. I thought to myself, a vacation would have been nice, though. Here I am home from the Navy 3 days. It's off on my own again. I guess it's true what they say. You can never go home again. After 3 months in the Carman's training school, I drove to Southern Railway's Inman Yard in Atlanta, Georgia. The train yard was like nothing I ever saw before. When you crossed the Marietta Street Bridge and approached the main entrance, all you could see was lots and lots of train tracks filled with trains spread over a vast area. After following the road through a maze of twists and turns, and even driving through a tunnel and under a bridge where trains were being shoved to the hump, and passing through a huge engine terminal full of locomotives, I arrived at the mechanical department general foreman's office. It was a metal building out in front of the repair shop. I later learned it was referred to as a rip track. There I met 3 general foremen, Jimmy Durham, Pinky Freeman, and Mr. Emmerich. All of them were people I had dealings with over the course of many years. There were 5 of us beginning to work that day. It was December 19th, 1969, a date that was to become my seniority date, so you can understand why I never forgot that date. We were given a stern talking to as to what was expected of us, and that our employment there for the first month or so was on a trial basis, and we were subject to dismissal without any hearing should we be deemed unsatisfactory for any reason. We were told we would be assigned around the yard in various positions for the first week or so. That day, I was sent to the forwarding yard and told I would be working a box packing job. I believe it was considered by most the least desired job in the yard. I was promptly issued a packing paddle, a long metal device. I got one hanging in the basement, and I'll try to remember to take a picture of it and insert it here so you can see it. And a large oil can with a long spout, and had a wire wooden handle similar to what you may see on a bucket. Packing paddles, by the way, are now obsolete, as friction-bearing journals are very rare these days. You will occasionally see a few old cabooses and such with journal boxes. I used packing paddles throughout my career, especially when working a box packer job, and every time I repacked the journals for repair shops, and when replacing wheels in the shops and out on the line of road. Over the years, I replaced a lot of wheels on trains. My next issue in this journal will begin with my recollections of that first day on the job and continue in whatever direction my mind takes me, because I think this video is getting a little bit long. I truly appreciate those viewers and subscribers who have stuck with me and want to hear more of my series in the life of a railway carman. Your comments are welcome. Thanks for listening, my friends.